This month, Newton Newsmakers goes green. We'll talk with Peter Smith, Marcia Cooper, and Jay Walter from Newton's Green Decade Coalition. That's Green Decade Newton, now celebrating 20 years. And Alderman Deb Crossley will fill us in on the effort to bring Newton a Green Communities designation by the state, and what that could mean to all of us here in the Garden City. So if you care about your environment, saving energy, or you just want to find out what's happening in your own backyard, stick around. Newton Newsmakers is next.
Newton Newsmakers is made possible through the generous support of First Commons Bank, Beacon Street in Newton Center, representing the future of banking with an inviting environment, the latest banking technologies, and a personal touch to make banking convenient, simple, and sensible. Also at firstcommonsbank.com.
Welcome to Newton Newsmakers. It's Newton's local roundtable discussion program. I'm Charlie Shapiro. Newton, Massachusetts is clearly one of environmentally most conscious communities in New England, if not the entire country. From recycling to energy conservation and greater efficiencies, people here care deeply and look for ways to do their part. Leading the way in these efforts is Green Decade Newton, now celebrating its 20th anniversary. And with us from Green Decade Newton, Peter Smith, Marcia Cooper, and Jay Walter. We also have Alderman Deb Crossley, who is on the cutting edge of helping Newton become a greener and more sustainable type of community. So first of all, thank you all very much for coming. Let's start with Marcia. You are the president of Green Decade Newton. Tell me first a little bit about the organization, and let me lead you into that by putting on the screen what Green Decade Newton's mission statement is. And I think that hopefully will give people a little bit of an idea. The mission statement is create an environment in better balance with the natural world by making significant, measurable improvements in the way we use resources. So that sounds great. Obviously, it's a good goal. What does Green Decade Newton do to accomplish that mission statement?
Well, it's a gigantic goal, and we believe that if every community focused in on environmental projects and events like we do in Newton, the country would be a lot better off. Newton was founded, as you said, 20 years ago, and with a very small group of people, and it's grown to have a membership of 500. And not only that, we had around 300 volunteers working on various projects last year. And they're very significant projects. They're not just trying to increase recycling, although recycling is high up on our priority list. We have many projects. We're working with schools, for instance, and we sponsor an art contest in the schools, and we get funding, and we give out prizes to the students. And that's a lot of fun. It's a big project, and we gave out about over 100 prizes very recently, with the mayor as a guest at the awards program. And in just a few weeks, on June 8th, we're having a big celebration at LaSalle College, and it's open to the public, and we expect a few hundred people to be there.
Aren't you honoring somebody at that particular celebration?
And we're honoring one of our co-founders, the fabulous Peter Smith here.
Well, by pure coincidence, we happen to have Peter Smith with us. What do you know?
And by the way,
welcome.
Peter and Louise Bruin co-founded Green Decade, along with other well-known people in the community, Beverly Droz and Barbara Herson, for instance. So they started out with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm to do something locally on the environment.
Well, let's talk about more of that in a couple of seconds. Let me get to Peter for a minute, and we can come back and talk more with you about some of the projects that are going up. But I just want to introduce Peter Smith to the audience. Peter, you've got quite a background in addition to being involved with the founding of Green Decade Newton. You're also director of Community Without Borders, which I'm not sure if you're still doing that. I believe that
yes.
You have been involved with that, supporting the education development of over 1,500 AIDS orphans and other kids in Zambia, among other places and among other things. So clearly you're somebody who believes in doing good and extending your reach out to the broader world. And so I think Newton is, A, lucky to have you here, and clearly by the honor that you'll be receiving on the 8th of June, it's a terrific time for you.
Well, I think the honor for me is really symbolic because, as Marcia said, it really has been always a team effort, and with 300 volunteers helping out, people from all over Newton, from all different parts of Newton. It's really been exciting, especially the last few years. It's grown, and Marcia's doing a great job as president, leading us, and all of our board members are committee chairs and are really active and leading teams of other people. That's how we get up to 300.
Let me go back to just 20 years ago. We're not going to do the entire 20-year history because it's a very short show, but at the beginning, when you were first founding or helping to found the organization, what was the motivation of that? Well,
I can tell you kind of a very short, interesting story. I went to a 3-day conference at Boston College, and at the end of the conference, the people who were running the conference asked each of us to make a very specific commitment. What was our commitment that, based on what we had learned about global warming? This is 20 years ago. We were already talking about global warming. And there was a woman, a very nice woman in front of me who spoke first, and she said, I want to draw a line around my town and just work on government and business and residents in my town because I'm so overwhelmed by this global issue. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very impressive and a wonderful thing. And so I went up and spoke to her after the meeting was all over. And I said, what town do you live in? And she said, Newton. And I said, fabulous. Let's work together on this. And that was Louise Bruin. Mm-hmm. David Del Porto and Brooke Lipset also were part of that original founding group. So we really had a wonderful team to get started. We had an Earth Day the next year, and got a resolution from the Board of Aldermen.
Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think none of this really surprises that many people that the city of Newton, given the rich history of caring about the environment and just, you know, thinking locally or thinking globally, acting locally, and vice versa for that matter, seems to really fit the whole society that we live in here in Newton. Speaking of the Board of Aldermen, let me introduce Deb Crossley, who is new along with me on the Board of Aldermen.
Thank you, Charlie.
And first of all, thanks for coming back. I know you're on the show once before. I appreciate you coming.
My
and
pleasure.
I would love if you could talk a little bit about your efforts in what is happening with the green communities, because I think it ties into not only Green Decade Newton, but it ties into what Newton is really all about and the heart and soul of how to be more environmentally conscious and really do things the way that, that a lot of people in this city and other places believe they should be done.
All of those things. It's terrific to be here and to be sitting with such an illustrious group of folks who work so hard to make things better in Newton, first of all. And before I became an alderman last year, when I was simply a regular citizen activist, many of us were working on things that lead up to this thing called green communities. We were working on zoning for energy conservation. Last year, when we realized that the state passed the option to allow communities to adopt the Building Energy Stretch Code, which makes more stringent the practice of building residential and commercial structures, Newton was the first municipality in the state to adopt it, and that was a citizen-driven event. Mm-hmm. That actually is one of the 5 criteria that a community has to meet in order to be designated as a green community by the state. Mm-hmm. So there were 4 more criteria. So in January, we learned that the DOER was about to roll out the requirements for the rest of the program.
Mm-hmm. And the DOER?
Is the Department of Energy Resources.
There we go.
And we all went to the Mass Municipal Conference, and there was a big deal made of all the work that the Patrick administration has been doing on energy, and bringing new business into the state is a fundamental basis for this program. Bringing clean energy technology, which some folks believe is going to be the basis for a new economy, and welcoming them into the state. So I thought, perfect project for me. I'll bring this back to the Board of Aldermen, which I did through the Long Range Planning Committee, and see if we can't address these other 4 criteria, which meant I had to go to several committees and, you know, basically get the Board of Aldermen on board. And
which is not always the easiest thing to do.
Not always the easiest